Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at this very small portable power station from Oupes, or Oupes. So guys, I don't always just want to show you the big, huge, very expensive portable power stations that everyone calls budget friendly, because most of the time those aren't budget options for most people. These little guys though, however, this comes in at $139. And I will even have a discount code in the video description to lower that price point when this releases. But this is a 256 watt hour lithium iron phosphate, little tiny portable power station. Think of this as like a bigger version of those power bricks that you get. Anchor sells a bunch of them. Everyone sells little power bricks that you can plug your phone into. Those typically have 10 to 20,000 milliamps worth of juice in them to charge your phone a couple of times. This is just like the big brother to that. This thing weighs 8 pounds. So technically, yes, you could put this in a backpack. It is extremely light, really nothing to it. It does have a little handle on top, but 8 pounds. Are these gonna power huge appliances? Of course not. These are made to charge up your laptop, your tablet, your phone, run a few lights, maybe like a little DC operated fan for in your tent, things like that. These are not made to power heavy duty appliances. Anything with a heating element, scratch that off your list. These aren't gonna work. Now we're gonna run a few tests on it, and I'm gonna show you folks the results, do a capacity test, and make sure you're getting what you pay for with the rated 256 watt hours. Now this has a 600 watt AC pure sine inverter on it, which is great, but if you run 600 watts on this thing, you're gonna get 30 minutes of runtime. So it can run up to 600 watts, but just keep in mind, you're gonna suck that battery dry in about 30 minutes if you try to power something that big. I wouldn't recommend doing that just because you're gonna deplete the battery so fast. But you know, guys, up front, it's pretty bare bones. You're gonna have your LED screen. It is going to show you your runtime to empty and your time to charge when you start charging it. You've got two 600 watt AC outputs. You're gonna have two USB-A 18 watt outputs, one USB-C 18 watt power delivery. So 18 watts kind of is on the low spectrum of power, but again, this is a very small power station. And then you're gonna have your 12 volt cigarette style lighter output. But to start off, I did a DC capacity discharge test on this to see how close we could get to that 256 rated watt hours. And surprisingly, I was able to squeeze out of this battery 235 watt hours. That's 92% efficient. That's up there, guys. That's very efficient for a power station. So you are getting most of what you pay for, you know, when you see that 256 rated watt hours. 92% efficient, very good. And as far as charging goes, guys, the good thing about this is it does not have a power brick. You just get a simple AC charging cord, and this end plugs into the back, just like so. And this is gonna plug into a generator, your wall, whatever your AC source is to charge this guy up. And this thing charges at around approximately 290 watts. So that is well above and beyond the actual capacity of this battery. So you're gonna get a full charge in about an hour, maybe even a little bit less, to get this thing topped up all the way. That's extremely beneficial when you need to get these things topped off. I do, however, wish that there was a way to decrease that, because I don't always like putting that much juice into these batteries. It is a little bit harder on the batteries to input that much wattage, especially for a 256 watt hour battery in there. I wish we could kind of lower it to maybe even around 100 watts. But there is no option to do that. You're gonna get around 290 watts. As far as solar charging goes, this thing will accept up to 240 watts worth of solar, which is a lot for a battery of this size. It is rated at 15 to 35 volts or 12 amp. So if your solar panel is in between those specs of 15 and 35 volts and no more than 12 amps, up to 240 watts, it will work with this power station. So 240 watts doesn't seem like a lot, but when you compare that to the size of this battery, that's a pretty good amount of solar that this thing will accept. So kudos for that. But let's switch gears now, and I'm going to show you folks the actual AC inverter working. We'll hook up a solar panel, and then we'll come back for final thoughts, and I'll give you my opinion on this little tiny power station. Well, this thing is rated at 600 watt output, continuously running 600 watts. I've got a 500 watt heater here. It typically gets to around 580-ish watts on startup. So we're gonna see if it'll run that. This is a little bit below the rated capacity, so it should have no problems running this. Cut the AC inverter on. There we go. So that bumps us up to, we're at 400 watts now, 500 watts, 540 watts, 550. It's hovering right around 550 watts. I know that's really hard for you folks to see. That's a tiny little LCD screen here, but it is running it. We're below 500 watts now. So let's see what kind of voltage we're getting off of this thing running 500 watts. And that's not terrible, guys. That's 118 volts. So it's better than it being 110 volts, and this is pulling, again, almost its full rated capacity. Now let's check the sine wave on it. Kind of impressive, guys. That's a clean sine wave. So you could actually use this power station if you wanted to power a laptop, run an LED television. Really sensitive type of electronics could be ran by this. Now, it's only 256 watt hours, so you're not gonna get a lot of runtime. You might get 30 minutes of runtime running this heater. But in a pinch, you could use this thing to power one of those type of appliances. I am honestly a little bit surprised that the sine wave's so good and that we're pulling 118 volts. So not too bad. And just for kicks, I've got a 1500 watt heater right here. Let's see what happens. We are on. That's pulling 710 watts, and we're getting an error 1 message. So pretty much anything over 600 watts, it looks like this thing is gonna shut down after a brief period of time, less than a second. So that's good that the BMS works. It's not gonna overload this power station and burn it up. So that's kind of what I was expecting to happen, and it worked. So I want to check the DC feature of this power station and to make sure that it doesn't have some type of built-in cutoff device on it to where if it doesn't detect power, it will shut off after a certain amount of time. So I've got my Blue Eddy cooler here set to 66 degrees. Okay, so that compressor is not going to run continuously. So I'm hoping that if this power station doesn't detect any power for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, it's not going to cut itself off. So I'll report back and let you know if this thing has any type of DC cutoff feature on it. All right, guys, well, we have a problem. It is 6 hours later, and I came back to check on this, and the power station is off. It is not powering my cooler. So I did a little bit further digging, and here in the manual, it clearly states, when not loaded, the default standby time of this product is 4 hours. This product will automatically shut down after 4 hours. So gang, that is a huge problem in my opinion. I don't want my power stations to cut off without me telling them to, or the battery runs dry. There's no reason that Oupes or Oupes would have a 4-hour shutdown on this without the ability to adjust that. I get it, they do it so you don't run the battery dry on accident. If you're gonna take this camping, you don't need that DC circuit to shut down after 4 hours because you need to keep your cooler running all night. So for that reason alone, and the ability or the lack of ability for me to be able to turn that function off, I personally wouldn't buy this. But I might use these power stations differently than other people do, but I don't want I don't want this thing to cut off after 4 hours if it doesn't detect any type of power consumption going in or out. So yeah, I'll continue on with the testing, but this is kind of a bummer, kind of a letdown. And just checking out this USB-C, it is rated at 18 watts going out, so it's not a hugely powerful USB-C, but I'm gonna see if it'll charge up my little Energizer power station here. And plug it in here, and let's see what we get. So we're outputting 10 watts, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So it's actually 2 more watts above its rated 18 watt output. And we are charging the Energizer at 18 to 21 watts. All right, so I'm gonna show you the UPS feature on this power station. It is rated at 20 milliseconds. So in my opinion, it's not fast enough to keep a computer running, but I wanna show you how fast it is by showing you the light flicker when I unplug it from this power cord. So I do have this battery actually hooked up to my grid. It is technically charging, but when I unplug this cord, these lights are gonna have to use the internal batteries on this power station to keep it running. So you'll see how fast that transfer is when I unplug this in 3, 2, 1. Pretty quick. Let's try it again. And these lights are actually outputting 360 watts. So that's a little more than halfway of what this is capable of. Again, 600 rated watts, 360 watts for these lights. But I'm gonna unplug it again so you can hopefully see these flicker in 3, 2, 1. Okay, not too bad. 20 milliseconds again, in my opinion, is not fast enough to keep a computer running, but things like a refrigerator, fish aquarium, you know, things like that that don't require instant transfer, I think will be safe. But it is good that this tiny little power station at this price point does have a UPS built into it to use if you really need it. All right, guys, well, I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place on this to give you my honest opinion. It did great in every aspect of the testing, with the exception of it not running my cooler. That is a huge downside for me, for my application when I need these power stations. Now, granted, I set that cooler at around 65 degrees. In real world use, you're not ever gonna put your cooler to that temperature. You're gonna have it regulated to around 35 to 38 degrees, and it's gonna keep that compressor running in theory. So in all likelihood, if you did hook up a 12-volt cooler to this thing, it's not going to shut down until the battery is completely depleted, because that compressor is going to need to run at least once every 30 minutes to maintain that 35 degrees, let's say, internal temperature of the cooler. So I think if I would have put that cooler down to a lower temperature, this would not have shut off. But with me having it at such a high temperature, that compressor didn't need to run. So in order to save the batteries in this unit, it just shut itself down. That is a bit of a bummer, honestly, still in my opinion. I want to be in charge of when these things shut down. I don't want it to tell me when it needs to go to sleep, but that's just this power station's way of trying to save battery capacity if you forget to turn it off and you do need to turn it off. So I get it, me personally, I don't like it. But the 92% efficiency is great. You're getting what you pay for. The fact that it's 8 pounds, super, super light, pure sine wave, good voltage. It did get to the 600 rated watts. Everything worked as it should on this unit. I think for the price and the size and the weight and the overall fact that it did everything else really well, I think I can give it a thumbs up if you need a very, very small power station and you don't need one of these big, huge Bluettis that I used to have laying around everywhere, wherever they're at. I am redoing my wall over here, but I think it's a nice option if you need something small. So guys, again, check the video description below. Oupes is supposed to be sending me a discount code to put on top of that already very, very low price of 139 bucks. And that's it, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Take care.